Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? Everything okay? Can you hear me well? Good? Perfect. Welcome. My name is Renç. I am the product manager at Curve Labs, and Curve Labs is the development squad of PrimeDAO. Super excited to be here. I'm seeing some familiar faces from Paris, some new faces from Lisbon. All of you guys are welcome. Really appreciate, everybody's time, everybody's contribution to this ecosystem. And keeping that in mind, I prepared a very light presentation. It's not even a presentation, it's just like 3 or 4 slides, because I really wanted this to be more of a dialogue, of a conversation, rather than just me coming up here and speaking about something. And I do believe that you guys are the right people, this is the right audience to address these issues. Today we're going to talk about realizing a DAO-to-DAO future. And for that, the talk is basically divided into 2 parts. The first part, we're going to be looking into a little trip down the memory lane, and we'll go back to 2018 and understand how we really ended up talking about DAO-to-DAO collaborations. And then we're going to understand, why does this matter, especially from a cultural perspective. And then at the second part, there's going to be a world premiere of the new application that we're working on called PrimeDAO, which we're super excited to show you. So before really jumping into the meat of the subject, I want to take a step back and understand how did we arrive here? How can we talk about DAO-to-DAO collaboration? And for that, we go back to 2018, where Genesis DAO, the first functional DAO in Ethereum, and this phrase comes with a little disclaimer where we basically ignore the Tower of Babylon event that's kind of happened before that. And Genesis DAO was formed, and they had a vision. They had a vision of becoming this new organization that was fun, that is fluid in coordination, that is experimental, that is fair. And for that, they had an idea that's called DAO fractionalization. And basically with DAO fractionalization, they didn't want us to have one meta body governing every single thing, but they wanted to have smaller DAOs that will bring more composability, more agility, more collaboration, and more coordination to the whole ecosystem. And of course, in 2018, due to lack of tooling, due to immaturity of the ecosystem, this idea didn't really flourish. But the main point was perfect, which was not seeing DAOs as these isolated, secluded nodes, but more of them seeing them as networked islands. Because just as networked islands in history, even though they seem isolated, they're actually the catalyst for trade and cultural exchange. And this is what we need to be mindful about. Ever since 2018, when DAOs was first come to life, they always meant to collaborate and always meant to coordinate. Understanding that, in my previous talk I mentioned that, as DAOs, we have this claim, we have this vision of being the future of organizations. But in order to be future of organizations, we first need to outperform the legacy versions. And Patrick, he has a great article called Ownership in Crypto Networks, where he basically dives deep into equity and equity's role in governance, and he basically finds out that the world as we know it is basically owned by banking organizations who have ownership in each other. This is a visualization of global corporate control network emphasized by ownership, where you can clearly see the agents in this game. They tend to coordinate and collaborate with each other rather than compete with each other. And this is the kind of coordination game that made them too big to fail and helped them basically control the majority of the world. And, unfortunately for us, we have different ideologies, we have different ambitions, everybody in this room, everybody in this space. We don't really see eye to eye with these institutions. And there's a great quote by Beer Stafford, who is the godfather of Project Cybersyn and cybernetics, where he perfectly summarizes what happened with these institutions. And let's read that together. He says, "The institutions we have built to operate that economy, to safeguard ourselves, have all grown into large and powerful pieces of social machinery, which suddenly seem not so much protective as actually threatening." And there's an emphasis on social machinery here. So understanding where we are with these institutions, what we have to ask ourselves is that how can we facilitate this coordination and collaboration over competition soul and facilitate co-ownership relationships? And that is where a very important factor comes into play, which is culture. in order to understand how we can outperform the legacy versions, we need to understand where we're at from a cultural perspective in centralized and decentralized institutions. And we will take the next couple of minutes to kind of compare those two and really dive a little bit deeper here. So we have basically two sets of institutions. We have centralized institutions, which are basically inspired by the industrial era and the machine, and which are basically control mechanisms. And on the other side, we have responsive and adaptive systems, which are inspired by the regenerative era and the life itself. And both of these institutions have certain characteristics that are very, very significant to them. Starting with the centralized institutions. The centralized institutions, they tend to be linear in thinking. They tend to focus on cause and effect. They tend to focus on prediction. And they tend to be masculine dominant. They tend to be, addressing the left hemisphere of the brain. And overall, the ideas, the goals and aims of centralized institutions, they're always centralized around the individual and the ego. While on the other side, we have a system that doesn't think linearly, but we think interconnected. And we don't really care about cause and effect because we design systems that sense and respond and then fluctuate and be agile according to the input of the system. And at the same time, we don't really care about gender, because what matters to us is the participation of the agents. And at the same time, we don't really have anything to do with the ego or individual, and our goals are always centered around the ecosystem and the ecology that we're living in. So, understanding this comparison, the challenge we have in our hands is how do we take what made the centralized institutions so great, and how do we ground it with Web3 values, which are, open source, which are desire and transparency, which are community, self-sovereignty, open access financially to everyone, rather than just having this, extremely permissioned system that, most of the institutions are stuck in. And there's a great part in Kia's article called Prehistory of DAOs, where she perfectly phrases this as well, and she says, by embracing cooperativism as a protocol rather than a corporate structure, DAOs can emerge a new cultural space where we can outperform the traditional divisions. And it's really key to understand that in this non-monopolistic nature of DAOs, we have so much leverage to have shared use in knowledge, in resource, in talent, in everything that we can imagine. And in PrimeDAO, we understand, the historical nature of Genesis DAO and what they had envisioned, and we understand, this unique cultural opportunity that we have in hand, and we want to make DAO to DAO a real thing. And for that, it has been a long journey, and that journey started with an intense research period where we collaborated with the folks at Block Science, and we asked, certain questions. How do these DAOs actually collaborate? Like, what do they do? If they want to collaborate, what does the architecture look like? What does the tech stack look like? And all of those questions then created a sprint of development and basically specification, where Marvin from our backend team and his team called ByteRocket, they took over the smart contract architecture. And in parallel, we ran UX and UI workshops intensively for a couple of weeks, and we adopted this agile development methodology where we did not just put our head down and designed, but we actually went out there, we sent out diplomats to other DAOs, such as Olympus, such as Tokamak, and we tried to understand their needs, how do they want to collaborate, and we basically created this application to address those needs, which I'm going to give you a small demo right now. While we switch to the demo, I will start with the name, which is Prime Deals. And with Prime Deals, with the name, we want to take something long and exhaustive, such as DAO to DAO collaboration, and we wanted to make it something straightforward, which is actually two or more DAOs coming together and try to make a deal with each other. And here, this is the homepage, and we're going to dive into the running deals. Now, the navigation in this application is solely going to depend on what the user wants to do, but the running deals is a great part to start, and I do believe that it's going to be the most interesting for everybody in the audience. Basically, running deals is two or more DAOs having an idea of a collaboration and having an active negotiation about it, either rejecting it or accepting it, and at the end, they're going to have an on-chain execution of a token swap. And token swap is going to be the first module that this application is going to support. But I want you to keep in mind that this application is going to support the whole journey of this DAO-to-DAO collaboration. So starting from matchmaking, the negotiation process, and the on-chain execution. If we go to the running deals page, we'll see the title of the deal, a description of the deal, and on the right-hand side, you start seeing some functionalities. We'll start with the fork deal, because sticking true to the blockchain nature, if you like something, you don't have to create it from scratch, and you can fork a deal that kind of looks appealing to you. And we have reject deal, edit deal, accept deal, and negotiate. And this is the visualization from a DAO representative perspective. So there's going to be different user groups that are using this application. One of them is the most important one is the DAO representative, where basically it will be impossible to have every single member of a DAO try to make a deal with every single member of another DAO, but we still have DAO representatives who can basically speak on behalf of the DAO and take decisions on behalf of the DAO. So these DAO representatives, they come here, they accept, they reject, or negotiate a deal, and we have on the right-hand side a voting mechanism, again, not for the whole DAO, but for the DAO representatives to come and vote on this deal. And it's a 3 out of 5 mechanism, so basically, if 3 representatives give it a go, they can move on to the on-chain execution part. And we have, deal information, DAO 1 gives X amount of tokens, DAO 2 receives X amount of tokens. At the left-hand side, we have deal clauses, and this was actually a feedback given to us from a DAO that we were working with, and they told us, it's not just about the on-chain execution itself, but it's also about the soft agreements that goes into this deal. I will talk about your brand in a certain way, or our community will engage with your brand with your community in a certain way, and those clauses will be listed here. And furthermore, if these DAO representatives would like to negotiate on these clauses, we have a discuss section. It's kind of like a forum where these DAO representatives can come in and have these back and forwards within this application. And this is built in a Web3 native way using Ceramic as a tool. And this is the running deals part. Now, if you go to open deals, this is basically a market for deals where a DAO can come in without having to find a counterpart and basically provide a deal for the whole market to take on. I will swap X amount of tokens with a person who agreed to this clause, and a person can come in and accept this deal or not. And we can let our imagination run quite wild with this, and it can be an abundance of opportunity for everybody involved. I will quickly run you through how you actually initiate a deal and how you submit a deal. It's very, very simple. You come in, and first you have two options. It's going to be either a token swap or joint venture. We're going to go live with token swap, and then a joint venture will be added, where basically 2 or more DAOs within this application can come in and form a new entity who can support a new goal and a new aim. If you choose token swap, basically you can fill out your proposal, you can go to deal details, you can select your DAO, you can put your token address, you can state your clauses, you can state your terms, and then you can submit your deal. Now, we talked about 2 modules so far, which is token swaps and joint ventures. We're also going to be supporting Coliquidity, where basically 2 or more DAOs would like to create a liquidity pool, likely through Balancer, and they can do that within this application. And we're also going to be supporting co-farming. So once you create a liquidity pool, you can create farming mechanisms using this application, and everything can be done with one platform. And at the same time, we want you guys to imagine that this architecture is built in a way to support 2 or more DAOs making a deal, swapping 2 or more tokens at the same time. So we really have an ambition of seeing a sophisticated deal in this ecosystem where, 4 DAOs come together and they can swap, 3 or more tokens with each other. We also have another project that is adjacent to this called the Proposal Inverter, and that is currently being developed, and it's going to be out soon, and it's super exciting, and it's actually being true to the nature of DAO-to-DAO collaboration. There's different squads that are participating in it. So to wrap things up, we understand that, historically, DAOs were always meant to collaborate, and we understand that there's a unique cultural opportunity in this space to outperform the legacy versions and really create something that's going to touch many, many lives. And as PrimeDAO, we are building a very cool product to address these things. So if you want to chat about it, please come and talk to me. If you want to reach out to me, please use these handles. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the day and enjoy the after party.
Renç, thank you so much for that talk. Would you like to take any questions? Or
of course, if there are any questions, I would love to take questions.
Sure. 1 second.
Thank you. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about the decision to make it really based on representatives. It seems very non-DAO to me. I mean, I understand that many DAOs are still, or DAOs are still not very much a DAO yet, are in that process of decentralization and so on. And elections is a very common primitive of the space. So effectively, a DAO could run kind of like a sort of pre-approval and elect someone, perhaps with some constraints or something. But other than in a fairly like early stage of decentralization, how do you actually envision these working, let's say for an Uniswap sort of DAO or something like that?
That's a great question. We actually have not taken any of these decisions ourselves. This was, as I said, a collaboration with different DAOs. Like we went out there and we asked them, like, how do you guys do this right now? Like, and they said, there's a person who's responsible for, it's a business person or a DAO diplomat or however you want to call it, and they go and they dive into the forums or telegrams or discords of these people and they try to connect with their counterparts. So even though I understand your question that this DAO representative seems a bit like anti-decentralization from a concept perspective, this is how it is right now. And this is just a tool to kind of facilitate it. But in the end, it was actually a very inspirational workshop over there that, in the end, hopefully, this can evolve into communities engaging directly with each other in a non-chaotic way, in a beautifully chaotic way, and we won't need these, middle DAO representatives. As we move towards, next iterations and next versions, we will keep on changing the platform accordingly, and hopefully the ecosystem will grow towards what you're envisioning, and, we would love to support that idea.
Great. Thank you very much, Renç, for your talk.
Thank you, guys.
Warm applause for him.